So I'm about to start a loop, and before I go into any loop I'm going to be kind of thinking about key, I'm going to be thinking about tempo, and when I start a loop I want to be in time, and so let's just try, and I'm going to pick D major because that's what I've just been playing in, and we'll see what comes out. So maybe I'll just right, so let's just get started with something. Now I'm just overdubbing over that. Stop the overdubs and just sort of play around for a bit. I'm trying to stay relaxed as I record, and not really go for something too outrageous in these initial kind of dubs. I just want to try and make sure that I'm staying pretty in time. Switch on some reverb. Adding in some kind of higher stuff, so I'm going to drop the looper speed to half speed and start recording. I want to try and get a sense for the rhythm. Now, I'll stop the overdubs, and then when I put it back up to full speed, those little swells you'll hear should be up at an octave higher. Yeah, cool. So now I'm just going to improvise around with this. I can stick on a delay as well. speed and then hold the once button so that it will cut off. So the looper helps me to get kind of music from nowhere in quite a creative way, I think, and I really just love spending time with a looper. Anyway, here's some more stuff to do with the looper. That was the intro, innit? Right, okay, so Clive, Patreon member, asked if I would do... Why is that humming but I'm not? No. Anyway, asked if I'd do a video kind of exploring looping with the Podgo, and so for me, I think looping is one of my favourite kind of creative things that I do as an improvising guitarist. Can be really fun, really spontaneous, but I know that getting into it kind of takes some work in the first place, so I wanted to kind of talk you through a few aspects of it and how I think I would approach it if I was trying to go from being wherever I'm at initially and getting to where I'm going to go. I'm going to show you this on the Podgo interface in a minute, but the first most important aspect I think of looping will be timing, presumably, right? And I was just watching Yannick Guisdala talk about 3 essential looping techniques for bass. One of his tips was to play on the downbeat of your loop. So when you first start looping, what you might find is that your loops, it's not even just when you start, it's kind of an ongoing thing, depending on how your timing is. Mine's not good, but you'll find that it's difficult to line that thing up so that you're actually playing in time. So the first exercise that I might do would be pick two notes or something like this and just practice literally starting and stopping a loop in time and try and improve on that aspect. So you might go 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally I will be counting before I start a loop, or playing the thing that I intend to loop. 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Start the loop. 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. Stop the loop. Oh wait. So also with the Podgo, don't forget you've got a 1-button looper, which would be something like the Ditto, and the 6-switch looper, which is what I just engaged. So make sure you know which you're using. We'll go more in depth on that in a second. So as I say, I'm playing and counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Start the loop. 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4. And one of the things that Yannick said is that play on that downbeat so that you're starting the loop, but you're still playing, and then you can get an instant feel for whether it's in time or not. 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. So, you know, I just keep practicing that one aspect. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 1. And then from there you can start to do overdub stuff, and you know, perfection is probably not a real thing for most of us, but we can have things that are more or less in time. And so you want to, you know, start to gradually improve this aspect of your looping, so that the next thing that you loop is more likely to be in time. And I work on my timing in the car when I'm driving and all this sorts of stuff. It's just an ongoing kind of battle. So let's just do that again. And also a thing that I like to do is use the first loop to kind of set the time of whatever the thing is going to be. Generally I like to keep that first bit fairly simple so that I can build upon that, just as an idea. So we'll keep going with this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. And you know, that could be something that you practice kind of on a daily basis, and you know, this can be a really useful thing and a little bit more creatively inspiring than a metronome. So you'd use this kind of thing. And you also want to think about how long you want that loop to be. So for me personally, I don't tend to loop often a whole form of a song, particularly with the line 6 loopers, because they don't go much longer than, you know, I'll flash up on the screen what they are, but you know, if you use them in mono, they're slightly longer, and if you use them in half speed mode, you can get a bit more length out of them. But that's kind of my thing, is I like to try and do like a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop or something like that, or even just a 2-bar loop thing. And you know, so what? That's a kind of 2-bar loop thing that we've got going on there, right? 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4. You know, you might get 1 or 2 chords in there, so we could try and. Also, don't forget, so one thing to bear in mind when you start your loop, think about dynamics. So at some point potentially you're going to want to play over this loop. So this is a thing that I try to remind myself of. So you don't necessarily want to be starting your loop with like a, because then if you try and play delicately over that, the loop is likely to be louder than what you've got going on, unless you want to get down there and sort of play with the playback level, the overdub level and all that stuff. I like to try and keep it simple, and so just start your loop kind of a bit quieter than you think you're going to want it. And also as you build up the layers, that volume naturally increases anyway, and you still want to be able to cut through over the top of that. So that's something that I was bearing in mind as I recorded this loop. So that kind of thing. So let's just jump in and get a little bit closer to the Podgo, and I'll show you a few little bits and pieces. Hopefully this is going to be sort of useful, Clive. And if it's useful to Clive, it may be useful to 1 or 2 other people too. In theory, at least. Right. So part of what makes it a little bit more tricky using the 6-button looper on the Podgo is that, in my opinion, because you've got that screen rather than the scribble strips, for me, I'm kind of having to look in 2 places. So you're looking at the screen to figure out which button does what. So if you were really into this looping, you might want to stick a sticker and just, you know, tell yourself as you're looping, so you don't have to look all the way up at the screen. I think it, you know, it seems like a silly thing, but it's possibly not. You also want to think about your looper placement. So for me personally, I place my looper after the amp and cab, but before delay and reverb. And you also want to think about, do I want delay and reverb on the loop? Because those things can sort of throw out your timing a little bit. So I'd suggest maybe straying away from those to start with. So here's the play stop button, and we got over here, this is the 6 switch looper, and then we got just play once. So you could play your loop, and if you wanted to kind of tidally end or more tidally end, I like to use that. Well, I don't actually, but I think I should use that play once to kind of end it a little bit more tidally and less abruptly than if you're just trying to stop it as you're playing at the same time, because timing issues can creep in there. This half full speed thing is really useful. Also the undo button. So first of all, the undo button, you can undo the top layer can also press it again to redo it. So that's a really useful way to kind of build up a loop and then strip back a loop again. So that's what the undo button does. So you can't go back layer and layer and layer, but it can strip off that last layer that you recorded and it can re-put that back on. So the half speed is really useful for this kind of thing. So it throws things down an octave, but also if you record a layer here, when you throw it back up to full speed, it jumps up an octave and double speed. Which is really useful because that's a way of having some less guitar-y textures there. And another thing you can do is use this same concept with the reverse as well. Undo to get rid of that little reverse section. Add it back in. Play once to tidy it up. Okay, so that's kind of a little rundown of that Podgo. I want to record this so that I can play over this as an intro as well. Not as complicated as it looks in some ways, it just takes a little bit of getting used to. Once you've got used to this idea of starting and stopping a loop in time, that is for me the more kind of tricky part of looping. What the looper can actually do is less complicated. So the other aspects that we got in here though, if we press view, playback and overdub. So playback is kind of your playback volume. So like I was saying about starting the loop with headroom, if you find that you've recorded it a bit loud, you can turn down playback. You can also turn back the overdubs. You've got a low cut and a high cut as well, which you could do some creative stuff with that. You could do like if you assigned the expression pedal to the high cut, you could kind of sweep things in and out. You've also got the one button looper, which is the same as a ditto looper. And with that, you press once to record, press stop to continue playing that. You can press it twice if you want to stop that recording. Press it twice and hold it to clear that recording. Just hold it to undo the last layer. So there's a lot you can do with the one button looper, but the reason that I tend to go for the 6 switch looper, and it's also worth bearing in mind where you've actually got the looper assigned if you're trying to do this sort of stuff on the fly, is because you've got the half speed and the reverse, and I find those really useful creative little tools. So that's kind of my little overview there, the things that I think matter with the looper. Other things to bear in mind, you may want to put it post delay and reverb. That's kind of up to you where you put things. But once you start switching in and out of effects, it's really kind of quite difficult to do this on the fly here. So what have we got here? We've got mode. If I take it out of this view, maybe, that's a snapshot view there, and then we've got the effects view there, and then from the effects view you can come into your 6 switch looper. But maybe I need to spend a bit more time doing it just on the Podgo, because it's a little bit of a different vibe because you can switch between these modes. So press mode to get into snapshots. So in this case, this has pads as well. Press mode again, you can come into this kind of view here where you could turn on effects and that. But also this view is where you get back to your looper. So it's worth just, you know, spending time switching between those. So that's kind of my advice. I would start off trying to record these loops. On the Pod Go, you start a loop here, and then I stop a loop with A if I don't want to overdub, or I stop the loop with the down switch, this record, if I'm going to continue to overdub straight into it. Hopefully that's vaguely helpful. Clive, let me know if there's other questions about this or other aspects to looping that you want me to try and do a video about, and I can do that. Thank you for stopping by, and feel free to like and subscribe. You can get this preset in the folder if you want it. Cheers.